Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth installment of our epic devlog series. In this video we're going to be covering weeks 6 and 7 of our content updates, which are going to have us go over the various modifications to the new melee weapons that we saw last week, as well as covering the highest detailed concepts we have ever shown off for the facility, which go into detail about the specific zones you'll be exploring throughout the experience. We have a lot to cover since there's a ton of concept content to discuss, so let's go ahead and get right into it. But first, as many of you know since we don't shut up about it, we have a Kickstarter page set up and would love if all of you would go and follow it. Following the page and spreading the game around on social media is extremely helpful to helping the page grow and rank a lot higher in the Kickstarter results, so thank you all who go ahead and follow and share it. Now, let's go ahead and talk about our new weapons. So the upgrades to the melee weapons that you will have in-game will rely a ton on our crafting system, which is a critical system that will pop up many times throughout the game. And we decided that we wanted to design a very solid system for weapons, since SCP titles that players know and love have largely left out certain aspects to combat and weaponry that really create rich gameplay experiences. And what came out of this decision was a system for weapons that effectively intertwines crafting and combat, since all the weapon tiers can be upgraded to some degree, with certain weapons getting much larger boosts than others depending on the upgrade. So players will be required to find specific resources to craft parts in order to make the desired upgrade for their weapons to make it much more effective in combat. And there will be several effects that melee weapons can have, such as scorching hot blades that cause massive damage, or poisonous gels that can slowly damage enemies, or even a brutal bleeding effect caused by attaching blades to otherwise blunt objects to make the weapon much more effective in close combat. Now below you'll see several pictures of the new weapons and their respective base upgrades. Now, these first three images show all of the upgraded weapons together with some of the other equipment that you'll be using throughout the facility, and also shows their unmodified counterparts, which will be the basis for which you craft whatever upgrade you desire, depending on the resources that you have, and also which weapon you're upgrading. Now, as for the specific upgrades, the first weapon we have is the axe in its basic form. And this is the upgraded axe with a sledgehammer attachment that will make it very useful for crushing boxes, and also as a blunt object to do some brutal damage to your enemies. Now there's also something special about this axe if you look closely, and if you find it, go ahead and comment down below what you think it is. But the next weapon we have is the machete in its base form. And the upgrade for this one is probably my favorite because it literally turns the machete into a superheated blade by adding a flame upgrade. So this machete is quite literally a flaming machete, which is legitimately awesome and will do a ton of damage, but will also require a lot of materials to craft. Last, but of course not least, is the Axle, which is the only tier 3 weapon on the list, which is the highest tier for weapons beyond those in the special weapon category, but we're actually be going over those separately in a future video. Now this weapon will deal the most damage out of any of the melee weapons and will feature a shock upgrade which can be triggered by the player to stun enemies and allow for quick follow-up hits that will have a much lower chance of being blocked. Now this is just the beginning when it comes to the upgrades that will be available for melee weapons, and we have many mods planned for both melee weapons and also guns that will make for some insanely interesting combat experiences. But that about does it for week 6, so let's go ahead and move on to week 7 and talk about some of the most detailed Site-113 concept work we have ever shown off to date. Now, the concepts we're going to be talking about have indeed been seen before, since they make for extremely pretty backgrounds to the videos, as well as for our Steam and other places that we tend to post. However, they are also extremely special in that they show off what the facility is going to look like and also where events will take place. Now, the first concept is the Site-113 exterior, which details precisely just how detailed the facility and surrounding area will be, and also shows just how large Site-113 actually is, which is massive. Now, one of the keys of this concept is the transit system and communications array, which will both play a part in your single-player experience. However, directly in front of the player lies the main space entrance to the facility, and is where your journey through the site will begin. As a side note, though, the character you see in the center will indeed be you, and this is essentially a sneak peek of the upcoming character model, which we are very proud of and will be shown off in the next video. Now, normally what's on the inside is just as important as what's on the outside, but in this case the inside is a touch more important because it's where the most horrifying experiences will happen. Now what you see here is the interior of Site-113, which is comprised of 5 distinct zones that you'll be visiting. each with its unique resources and SCPs that will vary in hostility depending on which zone you find yourself in. Now let's go ahead and break down these zones to get a clear idea of where each area is. Now to our immediate left, we have the entrance zone, which is where your adventure will begin and will be an introduction to all of the horrifying things that we are very eager to have you play against. This zone is also planned to house some creatures and will provide the starting resources you will need for the rest of the game. And from the entrance zone, you'll be traveling to the middle zone of the map, which is known as the hub. This is essentially your safe zone and will allow you to proceed to all of the other zones throughout the facility transport system. This zone will also be customizable and will feature several ways of customizing it to show off your style. There are also plans for this particular zone in regards to customization for multiplayer, and it's something we will discuss in the future since it's very important. From the hub, though, you'll be traveling to Aquaponics, which is the zone with trees and forestation to our immediate right. And this zone will be rich with natural resources and will contain a lot of what you need to craft specific upgrades to your weapons and your player to make you much more survivable in what will come next. Now, trees and forestation will have massively overtaken this zone and will pose as obstacles that you'll need to either cut through or find a way around, which is the sort of theme of this zone. And this zone also features special containment pens that focus on organic environments rather than plain cement or metal ones, and will be very worthwhile to explore. But next you'll be visiting the military zone, which is a frigid and icy zone that are the result of an accident of which you'll discover the cause of as you explore it. This zone features some incredibly powerful weapons that will finally allow you to go head to head with some of the tank-like creatures that have been stalking you throughout your journey. You'll also find armor upgrades and other equipment that will be valuable in defending against the aggressive creatures that call this frigid area their home. This zone is also planned to feature some very unique environments, due to some SCPs creating nests there and altering the environment as they please. You'll also be introduced to our dark zones, which are set to be extremely high risk, high reward areas that give a way to obtain much more valuable gear at the risk of losing a lot should you fail the encounter. Now the last zone is research and development, which is slated to be the most hostile zone in the game and doesn't need much of an introduction for those of you who notice the fleshy substance covering the entire zone. However, for those of you who don't know, that substance is indeed SCP-610, also known as the Flesh That Hates. And this SCP was housed in this zone for research purposes and has nearly completely overtaken the zone and absorbed a large amount of the biomass in the zone along with it. This zone features many unique enemies spawned off SCP-610 and will be incredibly dangerous. However, there will also be the most powerful resources located here to make your journey through it worthwhile. The environment of this zone will be very fleshy, which is going to cover most of the zone except for specific areas where it's unable to spread, and you'll find out why as you play. Now let's go ahead and wrap up this update with a look of some of the special equipment you'll be getting throughout the game. However, one of our biggest goals is to introduce players to new and unique weapons, equipment, and mechanics throughout the experience, rather than just giving boring AR-15 style weapons or military weapons that you've seen in every game. So we opted to go for more custom and unique weaponry to make the game much more immersive. And the first piece of equipment is a piece of healing equipment and is known as the syringe gun. This little piece of gear will be critical since it will allow you to administer some first aid and will give you a way to use serums that stave off certain status effects until you can find proper medical treatment. You'll be able to craft healing syringes for this, so make sure you keep an eye out for the resources required to craft those to help stave off death just a little bit longer. However, the next little wonderful piece of gear we have is the welder, which is one of the most dynamic pieces of equipment in the game and will allow you to weld doors shut, open vents, which yes, means you can literally vent, and it'll even help you repair some of the broken machinery that you'll be finding throughout the facility. And this tool will become the best friend of players who like shortcuts or to thoroughly explore their environments, which is a very worthwhile thing to do. The last piece of equipment we have is the Fabricator, which is a very special machine that will provide a way to recycle resources to allow the creation of new resources, or even to create upgrades, and these machines will be featured in specific areas throughout the facility. Now these will be critical in the process of upgrading your equipment and weapons, and in the crafting of ammunition for your weapons. And it'll also feature some really cool animations while it's running, so make sure you use one if you come across it. Now that about does it for this extra long mini devlog. Next week, we're going to be talking about our main character and railguns, as well as our transport ship, weapon skins, and flamethrowers. It should be a very interesting devlog, so make sure you subscribe to get notified when we post it. Also, do not forget to follow the Kickstarter page and check out our Patreon right now to grab yourself this Patreon exclusive weapon skin that is only available for people who donate $20 or above for this month alone. So if you want to be able to flex in multiplayer and single player, I highly suggest you go ahead and check it out in the link below. Now I hope you all enjoyed this post. Make sure to comment below if you figured out the Easter egg on the axe, and I will see you all next week.